Welcome to Whistleblower Network News. I am your host, Jane Turner, FBI whistleblower and advocate. It is our honor to share with you these experiences of real life heroes and people of integrity. Such an honor today to have June Bellamy from South Africa on our show. I'll tell you, she is a hero out of South Africa. She blew the whistle on Samsung. As most people know, that's a huge company. Welcome, June, to our program, Whistleblower of the Week, sponsored by Whistleblower Network News. I'm so happy to have you on the program.
Thank you, Jane. It's been a long time coming, but I'm very, very happy to be here with you today.
And let's talk about that. You blew the whistle on Samsung in 2017. Can you tell us, June, what that was all about, what position you held, what you blew the whistle on?
So in 2017, I started at the company in 2013 in a different department. That department closed down. I shifted into the service division. And Samsung had implemented a zero tolerance policy for all staff, and they were trying to tighten up the unethical behavior and all that type of thing. If you look at Samsung in Korea, unfortunately, they've got a lot of their presidents involved in corruption with Samsung who've been found guilty. Then they get an appeal and they're released. And that's happened, about 4 or 5 times as recent as last year. So what I blew the whistle on in Samsung at the time was a lot of breaches of the internal company policies, which were being enacted by the service director at the time. And what I did is I blew the whistle on these instances, and the retaliation started immediately. The whistleblowing was out of conscience, which is something that our constitution allows. And it's the same, I suppose, as if an environmental whistleblower speaks out. There's not money involved there. But I saw a lot of injustices happening to many people, both within working for Samsung and also with their service partners. And that's why I chose to speak up on behalf of them.
Can you give us just a couple of examples, June? I would really like to hear.
Sure. So, of course, to ensure the company policies with most companies, they don't allow nepotism, cronyism, inflated salaries, all that type of thing. So a lot of people had been brought in who were either related or family, and they were being brought in at inflated salaries. Other people were being given an extra 20 days leave, but it wasn't being recorded. So there was a lot of this going on in that division, along with it was what I term unhealthy narcissism, when the leader of that division gives you that subtle, we work well as a division. If you have any problems, come see me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go to HR. So straight away, you are creating an environment of, we better not go to HR. And those systems are in place so that if you do go there and you speak out, the company in its entirety is supposed to support you. So there was a lot of fear in the division relating to how this director was manipulating people.
So Samsung, as we all know, is a worldwide company. It's huge. So when he told you not to go to HR but to come to him, it sounds like they just have a system in order to identify their whistleblowers, because we have that same kind of problem here. They want you to go up through your superiors, and of course, you've identified yourself. Do you find
Correct.
that, being anonymous would be a much better way to go for whistleblowers in South Africa?
So I have very mixed feelings about this.
Oh,
And I'll tell you, it's interesting that you asked me that, because when I whistleblew in two different formats. I used their confidential hotline, which, as you know, many companies have, and they profess it's all confidential, nothing will happen. And then I also went directly to the internal auditors, which is something that's a bit different for Samsung. And of course, I later learned it's a very biased concept.
mhm.
Um, but my identity was leaked within 2 weeks after I whistleblew.
Oh,
And
no.
this was by the auditors. The HR knew, the director knew that I'd whistleblown against. So straight away, there's a failure in that system. Then it puts you in a position where you're going
Mm,
into work, and, because I knew that they'd leaked my identity, and the auditors just tell you, well, get yourself an attorney. And that goes against everything that
mm,
most companies have in place. We will protect you. We need you to speak out. So for me, you're going in there, and literally the director isn't looking at you, won't because I
right.
know that he knows, but I'm not supposed to know that everybody knows. So it's an absolute stress of a scenario. So when you ask, should whistleblowers be kept anonymous? I don't think so, because you've got no power in that. You know, you're going into the space where you shrinking, they're attacking
Mhm,
you, and you have no power to do anything. Whereas if you go into the space, and your better systems would need to be constructed, but then at least it's a I know that it's you, and it's more open. And when retaliation does happen, because it always does, and they always
mhm,
do find out who you are anyway, which is
mhm.
another component of it. 99% of the time they're going to find out who you are. So rather put the whistleblower out there, and you automatically start training people to change in such a respect that the new culture is, we'd like to thank June for speaking up. She's a whistleblower. She had the company's best interests at heart. Thank you very much. So we don't have to hide anymore.
Yes. But unfortunately, isn't there a lot of fear in South Africa concerning whistleblowers themselves? Oftentimes, I am familiar with the whistleblowers there. They've been killed. I mean, it's not a comfortable situation at all. So, how does that work in the idea of identifying yourself? Because it's a real concern in South Africa, isn't it?
It is. It's a very, very bad situation, and it's a very dire situation.
Right.
So my response, to the previous questions, also relative to my situation. So a lot of the assassinations, unfortunately,
Mm,
are related to state capture and the corruption that's revolved around that. So the whistleblowers that have spoken out in those scenarios, and then it extends to the auditors that then start trying to recoup the money. Some of them have been assassinated. So
mm,
it's not a panacea to say yes, put us out there. I know, another that's in the witness protection program. For me, that's the worst case scenario, because
mm,
the suffering that you experience in that complete isolation
mhm.
is the worst type of mental trauma I think you can be exposed to. Um, so it's a case by case basis, but also holistically, because we have the problems that we have here. And also, a lot of the times, there's so little training as to the people in these departments, financial auditors, when they're coming up with these anomalies, they're speaking out because that's just in their nature. They are the
Right.
ethical ones, and it's something that you don't expect, you never think is going to happen to you, and it's not something that people are going in and training them on. Because if you are in what I would term a high risk position of finding corruption, then there must be a lot more training around that. As I've had myself, just basic stuff. If somebody's following you, because they don't just assassinate you on a day. It's not a whim. They're going to follow you. They're going to look at your routines, and hopefully you can pick up if somebody is doing that. So I think if we work it further upstream, the people in the office are not necessarily whistleblowers. They're workers. But workers, like I was saying, in the high risk situations, should be covered more and taught more, because when we talk about protecting whistleblowers, there's so many different facets of that, whether it's your physical state, your mental, your financial.
Right.
There's a lot involved there.
So back in 2017, and you were dismissed a year later, the retaliation started right away, didn't it? Tell us some of the things you went through right after you blew the whistle, because it is phenomenal.
It is. I was, when I look back at it and I talk about it, every time there's just something new that comes to mind. But I was absolutely flabbergasted because, you get trained every year. It's a verbal training, which is also an interesting thing, specifically in South Africa. They don't have a written whistleblowing policy. So legally, there's nothing to refer to because it's all verbal, which is suspicious in and of itself.
Right.
But before, we also don't just whistleblow overnight. I was, Googling whistleblowers. Who are these people? What happens? And it took me a few months. I'd spoken to the auditors before, and then you decide to do this. They were pressuring me to then get certain pieces of information that I had no access to. And this is part of the problem because I whistleblew. I was then away on study leave and annual leave for 2 weeks. When I came back, the retaliation started straight away. And the interesting thing is that my direct manager and then the director, it was my manager that sent the email, but the HR department was copied in.
Oh.
And that told me that HR has got their back, went to the auditors, and I said, what's going on? You've leaked my identity. And I found out that they had. So I'm going to pause for a moment.
Sure.
I've lost my train of thought.
No problem.
Because the question was?
The retaliation started immediately.
Yes.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. And it was brutal, wasn't it?
It was. And what's important for people to know that while I talk about it now, I know more about what was going on. At the time, you don't know. You're being gaslit, you're being mobbed and bullied, and you're in such shock. You can't believe, you don't believe what's going on, and you think you're going mad. And in the other respect as well is I've learned a lot. So I know the language, I can identify, they gaslit me there, that type of thing. But it was serendipitous because I had just a few months before I'd started studying mindfulness. And that sort of was a parallel journey. It was walking with me. And I started to become more aware and more aware of self. And I think that was partly empowered me. Because as the months went on, because the retaliation started straight away and it lasted for the entire year. And despite me trying to reach out, because you're reaching out to the auditors repeatedly and they're just not doing anything. And I started to see, okay, now they're bullying me. Now they're gaslighting me, that type of thing. So I was very aware of I became very aware of what was going on. I still didn't understand it exactly, but I can put it into place now. But the pain, the physical pain, was immense. At one point, I went to get an MRI because
Mhm.
the migraines and the headaches came, and
Oh,
I thought I was going to have a stroke.
yes. Yes. You are speaking of the symptoms that whistleblowers experience and get PTSD from. And I
Mm.
believe you got PTSD, didn't you? Severe.
Uh, I did,
Yeah. And
and
what's interesting about your case is sometimes it takes a whistleblower down, this experience. It's so hard and it's just, you don't know what's being thrown at you. You've become kind of a student of the effects of whistleblowing, what they're doing, and you have gone on to help other whistleblowers. In fact, starting your own little community there. It's not probably little now, but I mean, you are truly a hero.
thank you for saying that, Jane. It means a lot.
Yeah, I
Because
mean, it's amazing what you have done. And that's why I'm so glad to have you on the show because you really are a hero. And even though South Africa might not recognize you as such, we certainly do in the States.
thank you. Um, the what you say now, the PTSD and the trauma
Hmm.
that you go through, it is a journey of itself trying to get through it.
Yes,
Um, like when we talk about PTSD, we think we relate that to soldiers. And when I reached out overseas because there was no support here at the time, so we
right,
started a community, but we were whistleblowers trying to help whistleblowers. So it sort of imploded on itself, but also showed me where do I need to work? How can we change this? How can we fix this? And in that, I reached out and I found Jackie Garrick. And
right,
because she's a whistleblower herself, she's worked with veterans, PTSD. She's linked those. She understands that we get the same. And it was only about a year ago where she said to me, "Your war zone is the employment space. So
right,
I'm unemployable because I'm a whistleblower. Nobody wants to
right.
employ us.
No,
But I'm also unemployable because my PTSD won't allow me to go back into that space.
right,
It's not safe. That is where my war is, and
right.
I'm one of the strongest people I know. Um,
Hmm.
I've
I've
always
heard
stood up.
this. I've heard this.
I've
And
always
I
stood.
wanna I wanna ask you about your background because, I believe it's like a diamond. There's forces that, made you, and they, allowed you to withstand the incredible pressure and pain of whistleblowing. So tell me a little bit about how you grew up and your parents and your support system. I'm very interested in that because not everybody is a whistleblower. It's a life sentence. So very few can qualify. So tell us about yourself.
That has been one of the most, I think, interesting journeys for me because it did force me to. And people always ask us, what makes you a whistleblower and why doesn't
Hmm.
somebody else? And I had to research this over the last couple of years, and I came across the ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences, and I think it's 10 questions. Anybody can do it online, and if you've experienced 4 or 5 of those ACEs, which are if you have alcoholism in your family or parents divorced, if you are being beaten, all that type of thing, the more you have, the more adverse childhood you have, and you're going to respond differently to things in life. So I had a pretty good, happy childhood. I did experience um, physical abuse from one of my elder siblings,
Oh,
and I've always known about it through my life. I've not, it hasn't taken over my life. But when you come up against these narcissistic directors and that's when that trauma kicks in, and you don't like it, and you want to defend yourself. But in addition to that, my mom is deaf, and she only went deaf when she was in her early 20s. So her speech is normal. We don't sign language because it wasn't something that was done, back in the 70s and the 80s. So she lip reads. But in that, people have always stared at us when we have conversations because we slow down our speech. We sometimes have to repeat things. So I grew a very thick skin. I was also very protective of my mom. Throughout my life, I'm the youngest of the siblings. So as they grew up, they passed it down to me, but then it stopped with me. So I have my mom is a phenomenal role model. She's still around,
Hmm.
83. And then my dad was also very kind and compassionate, and he was an inventor of sorts, so a very creative thinker. But because of those, my protective instincts towards my mom, it has spilled over into when I was at school. If people were being bullied, they would come to me because I've always just stood my ground. And that's led to where I don't have fear of speaking up. I like to go to places where people won't normally go. I like to take different roads. And it's always been interesting. That's what makes it interesting. That's why when I landed in this space, it was never a case of, why me? I've reported, different bosses throughout my life for sexual harassment, where staff have come to me and said they've been threatened. So I've often done that. And I think, in a way, all of those years led up to this very big one. Because sometimes I think I wouldn't have been ready to take on this global big bully business, as I call them, which is Samsung, if, life hadn't prepared me for it. So
Mm.
it's made me resilient. It's not that it's fearless. It's just you prepared to stand your ground, and
Yes.
you can take whatever comes at you in a better way. But as I've experienced as well, it has put enormous strain on my family,
Oh,
to the point where in 2022, for nearly that whole year, I was actually estranged from them. So and I'm single, I'm not married, I don't have a partner, so you don't have that to lean on. But
right.
the strain was so immense that I had to take it on myself and step away from them and become estranged because the burden was breaking us up. And
Yes.
that's when I became absolutely broken.
Yes. Wow. Your honesty is just so revealing about your personality. I just admire what you're saying. Tell us about that year because you started this whistleblower journey in 2017 and they didn't fire you or dismiss you until a year later. What
Mm.
happened during that year and when did you what avenues did you find open to file any whistleblower case or subject that you had?
So during that year at Samsung, as I mentioned, the retaliation started straight away. Um, and you go back to the auditors, there's no assistance there. But one of the things that I did, and they didn't know at the time, is that I'd also whistleblown on their confidential hotline. So I set up a non de
Oh.
plume and I whistleblew in that space. Now, one of the things that I've
Oh.
learned, in putting together, I've got two cases against them. I've got a labor case and an equality court case, which specifically speaks to discrimination because you're discriminating against us.
That's right.
And when our law changed in 2017, just after our whistle blew. But the auditors were utilizing me for months, asking for information, all that type of things. And our laws changed in 2017, which stated that companies must now, within 21 days, once you've whistleblown, they must inform you if they are or if they aren't going to investigate, if they're passing it on to a third party, and they have to give you monthly or bi-monthly feedback so you know what's going on. And
Ah.
they weren't doing that with me face to face at the offices in Johannesburg. So I was utilizing my non de plume and I was asking those same questions through my non de plume. What happened though is because that was going directly to career. They then came around the office looking for that whistleblower using my non de plume. And I know
Oh.
this because I was now a friend of the auditors. And the auditor came round and he stopped me and he said, listen, do you know where so-and-so works? And I was dumbfounded. I mean, that is what has blown my mind the most, is where everybody says it's confidential.
And
We
it's
will
not.
anonymity, and they career said, keep the person, go and find them and keep them quiet. Just before they did that, actually, the auditors called me into the office, and straight away he sat me down and he said, you need to stop. And I said, stop what? He said, stop emailing career. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. It's not me. I whistle blew with you. I'm not talking to them. So again, they were accusing me of being this non de plume, and that goes against everything.
Yes.
Every company policy is that we will protect your anonymity. But here they were seeking me out by my non de plume. And then I had to, fudge it. And I said, I don't know. I've never heard that person possibly try, this division. They might know. But the fact that they physically came around the office looking for me is what absolutely lost all faith. And then after that, it was just a case of, you keeping your head down, then you're getting overloaded with work. And then you're getting, you're doing projects that have never been done before, but you're getting no credit for them. Then then other people are being given your task. And as one of my witnesses said, it wasn't in his job description. It was for me to do. And when he asked, we had the same manager, he said, please, can June help me? No, leave her alone. We busy working her out the business. Yep. So they're actively doing this, but at the time you don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
But it did get to the point right at the end where I had to then break my, my identity as a whistleblower, because not even the president's supposed to know. And I went to him twice. I gave him the email I'd sent confidentially. I'd sent another one to them begging Korea to come out to South Africa because there's no protection. Then they put you on poor performance, but by then you are so traumatized, nothing is functioning. You're not doing your work. It's just fear the whole time. And the president's response was, well, we'll have HR investigate the scenario, but HR was part of the problem. Right. So you can't investigate yourselves. And that was it. I went through dismissal hearings, which also breached all of their policies. They're supposed to give you, 12 to 16 weeks to correct. And I was dismissed in under 5 weeks. So, yeah, it's horrendous.
You have been through it, my friend. You have been through it. And the dismissal, I assume, was based on poor performance. That's what they always use. Of course, correct. Of course. Now, you have two cases, the labor court and the equality court. How are those going? Have they been decided? Hi, we'll be right back with more of Whistleblower of the Week after a quick message from one of our whistleblower friends. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, this is Austin Handel, also known as Officer Ash on social media and as the Dunwoody Whistleblower and the Vice Chair of the Lamplighter Project. Leading whistleblower attorney Stephen Cohn's latest book, Rules for Whistleblowers, A Handbook for Doing What's Right, is the ultimate guide to blowing the whistle. Rules for Whistleblowers is an easy-to-read, essential tool for anyone curious about whistleblowing. The book lays out 35 rules to help whistleblowers navigate the complex and dangerous world of whistleblowing. Subscribers to the Whistleblower News Network can also receive 35% off a copy of this indispensable resource. Visit whistleblowersblog.org/rules for whistleblowers to learn more.
No, and this is another point of contention and a way that we can hopefully change this. So if you, obviously, you don't have money. If you do have money, it gets depleted, and a lot of the times, things fizzle out over a couple of years. And this is everything that the company wants. This is their playing field. They've got the money, they've got the attorneys, so you're in their space. So I couldn't find pro bono. because again, a lot of so Samsung retains 2 of the top 5 attorneys in South Africa,
Of
and
course.
the big attorneys are on the pro bono what is it,
List.
so different pro bono entities have, because in South Africa you have to do some pro bono services. So the big corporations, because you want somebody that's going to be equally equivalent to the Samsung attorneys, but they're also on the pro bono in the pro bono space.
Oh,
so
smart.
So there's a conflict of interest. Yes, so
yes, there is.
I was being rejected there. Other than other smaller places, other pro bono places, the case was too big. There were too many components to it. So I had to make a decision. I said, and I'd also been gaslit, unfortunately, by attorneys. So, and that was another very traumatic. We talk about sanctuary trauma. Your attorney's supposed to be a trusted, safe space. But I've had, 2 or 3 very bad experiences with them. So I decided to take the cases on myself. So it has gone longer than what it normally takes, because over these years, I've had different mental breaks. I don't necessarily call them breakdowns, because for me it's negative. But I say you physically break. You are broken. You can't get out of bed. You're suicidal. So I've the cases on my side are a bit delayed. But there has been, I must tell you, there was an attempt at mediation, because, of course, true to form, when you go public, then there's a bit of okay, maybe we should entertain, some mediation. And throughout the years, it's like, we'll give you 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 14 months. And the problem also with the labor case, which is something that needs drastic changes, and the judiciary is looking into that, and they called on whistleblowers to submit suggestions. But from what I've seen, they're not listening to a lot of them, or they're not getting them, because in the labor court you can only request maximum 2 years of salary. Now, you whistleblow, and then years later you don't know you've got PTSD, and 3-4 years you don't know why you can't find a job, you can't get a job, you can't keep a job. So you actually need to be compensated for the rest of your life, because you are now unemployable. So the labor case is also taking a lot of energy for an amount that won't even save my flat, which is up for sale, or it's being taken away, and the car and the whole thing, because your financial decimation is so bad. But it's in the equality case where I'm trying to really show that there's a different way to do it. As in, don't waste your time in the labor court. Go to the human rights court or the equality court, and then tackle them there. If I had have known, I would have also lodged a civil suit, because then directly the people that have come after you in their personal capacity, those are the ones that can be taken to task, because then it speaks to one of the points that I work on, why there should be no NDA. Because the director I whistleblew against, 2 months after I'd left, he left, but he left under resignation, and I know there's an NDA in place, but then he now steps into another global conglomerate, which is Philips. But Philips is now, so whistleblowers can only whistleblow within the business. So, that's also what we're trying to change, to expand that. And I tested the theory. I did go to Philips. They entertained we spoke for weeks. And on the day that we were presenting the witnesses, the evidence, because it's also unethical that Samsung has covered up the unethical behavior, and given you a sterling review, and yet you step into another space and you're free to, wreak the same havoc. And that's what happened in state capture, because once you've destroyed that state's entity, they would just move them into the other state entities and then deplete them. So setting up that list, and we don't have that. You have a list for poor performers, so you get threatened if you take this to court, which is exactly what they did. Literally, the commissioner that you first have a conversation with, he said, they're going to bankrupt you. Just take the 3 months and, go away, because they're going to bankrupt you. They've got more money than you. Because if you land on the poor performers list, your ID number gets put there. So future employment, if they see you on there, you can't get a job. So my first question to him was, well, where's the list for unethical companies? Where's the list? Where's the list for unethical directors? And I said to them, I'm taking this to court, because there is ample evidence of everything they've done. They need to be held accountable.
So, June, do you feel this was a local problem for Samsung, or the company itself doesn't protect their whistleblowers?
So what started out to be what I thought was a local problem became an international problem. And I also only stumbled into this in 2019. What happened after I was left, people don't speak up, and they can't side with you and validate what you're saying at the time, because they're fearful of losing their jobs.
That's right.
But there were one or two people at the time that would give me warnings, literally walking past me in the corridor.
Yes.
Like, be careful, he's coming for you, all this type of thing. And then as they've left the business, they've contacted me and they've given me more information. So I now understand that the reason why there was no protection for me, the director at the time was covering up faulty product for Samsung Korea.
Oh.
And I didn't know that at the time. That's why it was imperative for them to get rid of me, because I was, speaking about this director in a completely unrelated, reasons. But what I didn't know at the time is that they were having weekend meetings and they were covering up faulty product. That is, I'm still trying to find this out. That's why I need a journalist, investigative journalist. So where they've uplifted product in the States, faulty washing machines, because such high volumes are sold into the States, you also have much more stringent laws when there's faulty products. People can complain, and Samsung is held to a higher standard there, and it was in one other country. So they recall these items in bulk, and I don't know if it was 630,000. I can't recall. And that was happening in 2017 at the same time that the Note 7s were exploding. But there's been another recall in 2022 of the same product. They're not recalling it. They didn't recall it anywhere else in the world. But my question is, how many hundreds of thousands of these have been sold into Africa, Asia, and because nobody's known about it, nobody's looking. And what they did in South Africa is they generated a fake campaign and invited people that had these models. We would give you a free service. And when the technician would go into their homes, they would make the repair and do the adjustment, and then that was it. But the problem comes in is that not everybody knew about the campaign. So there's still these washing machines all over that might be randomly, you can Google this, it's online. They're exploding. Some houses are catching alight. It's, damaging people. And because, they're isolated across the globe, nobody's watching, nobody's seen it.
Wow. So you really kicked over a rat's nest, didn't you?
Unbeknownst to me,
Right.
So whistleblower number one. And I said to them, I said, because I represent myself, I can, I speak to the attorneys directly. And I said to them, what wasn't the thing has now become the thing.
Oh, yeah.
I whistle blew against a corrupt and unethical director. But what it turns out to be is that the company itself is putting profit over people, and they're not doing fair recalls across the globe on faulty product.
June, that is why you're a hero. And I hope somebody does pick it up, because this is crucial. This is crucial. Like you said, people are getting hurt. And now, let me tell you something. You've worked with whistleblowers. You have obviously started a community, really, of whistleblowers, not only in South Africa, but other places, correct?
I'm part of the communities, yes. So I'm very much involved wherever I can be. I like to be in the space to voice. It's cathartic for me as well. The Oprah's saying to the effect of, the one thing they can't take away from you is your voice. So I love being in this space because helping others heals me.
Yes.
It's not generating an income, but it's where I'm connecting with genuine people.
Yes.
There has been, unfortunately, some ostracization and misunderstandings, but we're trying to figure those out when we work as a collective.
Right.
Because my voice is, I suppose, considered somewhat of a disruptive voice. And what they term a foxy thinker. You've got hedgehogs and you've got the foxes. But if we're going to have substantive change that will actually support us better, you have to take a completely different view on this. And
Yes.
the businesses are not going to like it, especially the private corporations.
Yes.
And there are ways that we can level the playing field, where we can remove the whistleblower sooner from being retaliated against. And a key component of this, which is what's been discussed around the globe, is setting up that separate ombudsman, a whistleblower office, where we can go directly to them instead of going to the legal system, which takes too long.
Takes too long.
Yeah.
Well, the UK is trying to get an office of the whistleblower. South Africa does not have that, do they?
No, but we have. So this again, when I met Jackie, I met Georgina Crawford Hall from Whistleblowers UK. So I've joined that scenario. I get information. I see what's going on there. And we, Jackie came out here, to launch a book. We had her here. We met with a couple of the different nonprofits, a little bit of radio interviews, and we knew that was happening in the UK, and so it has been picked up here. I'm not sure where it is at the moment, but there have been legal people advocating for it, where they've given examples of how it could work. Already we're looking at bringing retired judges into that space. For me, I would love to see whistleblowers in that space because I'm thinking of myself. We have so much information to share. We can ensure that when they go there, they are mentally protected. We're getting the right information and we're guiding them properly. We already do have the Whistleblower House in South Africa, which is over 2 years now, and they've done some fantastic work. I've received support from them beginning of last year. They do have criteria, and it's a 6-month stipend that you get. So I got that at the beginning of last year, so and that's obviously depleted now, but it gets you to the next stage and the next stage. And how do you survive, people say to me, because there's no income coming in, and there's been so many different weird things that have happened. This year I have an angel who is sponsoring me for this year to cover my costs of food, water, lights, although the water's been switched off by the city because there's arrears. But when it comes to the end of the year, where to from there? So
right. And let's talk about that, because you do have a GoFundMe. And
I do.
That's going to be critical for you, because you're in the process of losing your house, and no whistleblower should ever lose their place where they live, should lose their employment. So tell us about this GoFundMe so maybe some people can help you out.
I'd love to, because it is set up by Whistleblowers of America. So
Mm-hmm.
it's in effect, donations dollar based, and unfortunately, it's been up for a couple of years now. It hasn't really experienced any movement.
Well, let's see if we can change that. Give us the name of your GoFundMe.
So it's One Woman versus Samsung, and you'll find it on the Whistleblower of America's page. They have a
Okay.
donation page. I think it's Ted Blickwickle they've got there,
Yes.
and myself. So the amount that's on there at the moment is would cover to secure the roof over my head, and get the water back on, that type of thing. The car, it won't cover, and that will be taken next month. But I have managed to keep my vehicle and my flat longer than most whistleblowers, and I'm talking by 3 or 4 years, because I've been, bullying the banks back and testing the judiciary. So that's another topic. But yes, the whistleblower, the GoFundMe is there on the Whistleblower of America's page. And you're most welcome to donate there. The little that was there was sent to me this week to assist with covering the water. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough, but it definitely has helped me. It gives you that little bit of peace of mind, that little bit of hope that you're not living in isolation, because you feel like that. You feel like nobody knows what's happening to you. But there's people out there that do, as soon as one person knows, then, hopefully a ripple effect happens. And that's why I've really started sharing more and more on my socials, because everything I put out there under the South African law is with evidence in place, under freedom of speech, and in the public's interest. So
that's right.
And
it affects people even in the States. Samsung operates here. So, this is why Whistleblower Network News sponsors Whistleblower of the Week, is to shine a spotlight on these heroes, these whistleblowers who not only have brought truth to power, but are suffering because of it. And so I'm really hoping people contribute to you, because you deserve it. There's no two ways about it. You're a hero. You're not only a hero in South Africa, you're a hero here in the States. So I hope people respond. I hope they open their pocketbooks, because this should not be happening to you, June. This should not be happening to you.
It should not be.
Can you give us your? Could you give us your last thoughts?
So there is a whistleblower in America. His name is Andrew Moe. He has done some incredible positives with his case. And this is what Samsung underestimates. In today's social media, we are all connected.
Yes.
The world is watching more now than ever before. So the time's running out where Samsung feels that they can bully their whistleblowers out of the business, and they will go unpunished, because companies are starting to be banned from trading in countries, and it's happened here in South Africa. Those involved, some of them involved in state capture, they've been banned. Now, I'm One Woman versus Samsung.
Oof.
But I know I'm not alone, because, as I say, Andrew Moe, his case against Samsung Research is for racist remarks and unjust termination. And he's just recently won the first part of the case, which Samsung uses to try and force arbitration behind closed doors. So,
of course,
as I say, everything is coming out of the wash, because they make the washing machines. But sorry. But my final thoughts would be this: it's very difficult, There,
Oh,
there's
I know.
there's different ways to do it. Hindsight, 2020. But you need to find your way up, get off the floor, and every small step is still a step. And then you need to surround yourself with those key core people that will support you no matter what you're doing. People think, why are you still in this? I'm still in
Yes.
this because there's a lot of work to do. And I know I've made a difference because other people have reached out to me. And this community we like first responders, but with no support system. So we will support our own until the rest of the world catches up and knows how to properly support us. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere.
I'm looking forward to meeting you someday. You are a true hero. Thank you, and I hope our listeners contribute to your GoFundMe, and it was an honor having you on today, June Bellamy.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for listening, and please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to read more whistleblower stories, go to www.whistleblowersblog.org. Music by Rachel Kilgore. Editing and booking by Anissa Sheikh and Victoria Thompson. And a special thanks to our sponsors, Whistleblower Network News.
Growing up, I think you'll find that it's just as hard to stand up tall as it was when you were small. The truth is hard to say.